It's 6 p.m. in New York City. It's time for the Daily Wrap. And welcome to the show, everybody. Coming up, ISIS abducts close to 90 Christians in Syria. Veterans Affairs Secretary Robert McDonnell is caught lying about his military service, and Rev Al Sharpton is accused of being a money grubber, who thought, by the daughter of NYPD choking victim Eric Gardner. We'll love to hear about that one. But first, we're going to discuss all that and much more with Philly hotshot attorney Heather Hansen is here. Welcome, Heather.
Great to be here.
Forbes magazine Pulitzer progressive columnist and Sirius XM radio host Rick Unger, everybody. And finally, new to the Daily Wrap, author and columnist and apparently a former Minnesota Vikings cheerleader, Katie Kiefer. Welcome.
Wow.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, sure. Go Vikings. It's time for the Daily Download. Well, even if the president refuses to call ISIS Islamic extremists, ISIS is still trying to prove they are. Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, reporting today, Islamist militants have abducted at least 90 Christian men, women, and children from a number of villages in northeastern Syria. To get a little bit more detail on this breaking story, we are joined by phone by former CIA analyst, senior fellow at the Center of Security Policy, Fred. Fred, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. I'm sorry, Fred. How are you?
Joe, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So what do we know so far about this story? It's very disturbing, Fred.
It is very disturbing, and we're hearing reports from the media that 70 to 100 Syrian Christians may have been kidnapped. I've seen other reports. It could be a couple of hundred. It's possible that ISIS plans to try to trade these hostages for ISIS fighters who have been captured by the Iraqi Kurds. But we know from experience that ISIS has a habit of making offers like this, even though it has already killed the hostages. This is both an effort by ISIS to extend its campaign of terror to frighten the West and recruit followers. I also think it's an attempt to intimidate the Iraqi and Kurdish armies in the run-up to a possible military campaign to retake the town of Mosul.
At this point, would you call this a genocide? I mean, you keep hearing about I know that a lot of Christians are escaping. I know that certainly a lot have left Iraq, particularly since 2003. But still, it seems like every day we're hearing about Christians being beheaded, children being enslaved, and Christians just seem to have nowhere to go in that area. I mean, at what point do we start calling this a genocide?
I think we have to start calling it genocide, Joe. You're exactly right. It's an atrocity. It is genocide. And, I mean, ISIS right now is the face of evil in the modern world, and I think the media should be saying that clearly.
I agree with that. Airstrikes, we keep hearing about them, not only from, obviously, the United States, but Egyptians and Jordanians have joined in as well. Are any of these doing anything to slow down ISIS?
Well, the challenge with the fight against ISIS is that we have our hands tied behind our back. Obviously, the United States is not going to send troops in to fight in Syria and Iraq. President Obama wouldn't agree to do that, and the American people don't want that. So we have a very weak airstrike campaign. I think if we increase the number of airstrikes, we can make a difference in the fight against ISIS. We should be arming the Iraqi Kurds. We should be giving more support to Arab states who want to attack ISIS. We didn't even give intelligence support to the Libyans and the Egyptians when they struck ISIS targets recently. We could be arming friendly Sunni militias to take on ISIS. There's a lot we could be doing to discredit and weaken ISIS, and we're not doing it because the president does not have a serious strategy to take on ISIS.
Fred, do you agree with ground troops being sent in at this point? It seems like more polls, at least from the American people, are pointing in that direction.
I think ground troops could take out ISIS, but it's not politically possible. And even if there was support in Congress, President Obama is not going to do that. And my view is we have to focus on the possible. And the possible right now is that I think we can get ISIS out of Iraq by strengthening the Kurds and strengthening Sunnis and working with the Iraqi government. Weaken ISIS as much as we can in Syria. And down the road, we're going to have to find a way on what to do about ISIS in Syria.
Ultimately, more about our partners there than perhaps about ourselves. Fred Fleitz, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Okay, well, it seems like ISIS will do whatever they can to grab big headlines. Rick, not only does it seem like ISIS is winning the ground war, but the PR war as well.
Yeah, you know, what was interesting, I think you're finding that more and more all sides to the debate are starting to come together on some of these issues, arming the Kurds.
Are we doing that already?
We're not doing it enough, and I feel that way, and I think almost everybody that I've spoken to or know feels that way, that we have to get with that. I'm curious, you know, increasingly, that we talked about this a bit last night, there are accounts that we're having a bit more success in Iraq, and that we may have stopped them, and the die appears to be cast, and it looks good for our team. What nobody seems to be able to respond to, though, is what will happen in Syria, because there's so little that we can do.
Right, and then the alternative is that the powers that be in Damascus end up taking over, and that was supposed to be the worst enemy in the world, in other hands, in the first place, by using chemical weapons.
I mean, it's such a moving target. You know, Ash Carter had this big meeting yesterday, and he came away saying that, well, I like the strategy, it's the execution that we have to work on, but then you hear from Fred, who says we don't really have a strategy, and so you worry about what's the message here and what's actually going on. I do have to say, what came out of that meeting was a real respect for Ash Carter from the people who attended that meeting. They felt as though the fact that he said no PowerPoints, I want real lively debate, I think that's a good sign for the future of this part of the administration.
Certainly has the right name for a defense secretary, Ash Carter, right?
Very
Somebody
macho.
You don't screw with. Katie, welcome to the panel, first
you.
of all. Your thoughts on what's happened at this point with ISIS? They basically came on the radar in August. I mean, they were there before that, but the beheading of Jim Foley clearly brought them into our national spotlight. And it just seems like every day we're hearing about another atrocity, another savage act.
What's of interest to me as a millennial is that there's hundreds of Christian young men who have never fought in a war before, but they're fighting this battle, and yet we may have actually armed those Syrian rebels. In the summer of 2012, Hillary Clinton had a secret gun running program or a plan for that.
It's called Benghazi.
Right. Well, they've traced those arms to Benghazi and now also to these militants. So we do need to, before we arm anyone, look into who we're actually arming and make sure we support those Christians.
That's an excellent point. I just want to throw this thought real quick. Many liberals are towing the president's line on not associating their religion with their acts. Bill Maher, of all people, has been a very vocal exception. Let's roll that clip.
This idea that we cannot even call it Islamic terrorism seems Orwellian to me. It seems like we're paying a very high price for this, which is we can't discuss it even rationally. Can't we at least say that there are a number of factors that are involved, and the religion is certainly one of them?
Absolutely. Bill Maher's been very vocal on this, and he's been very consistent as well. So coming up next, more Daily Max. Thanks for joining us here on Newsmax TV. Welcome back to Daily Wrap, everybody. I am Joe Concha, joined by Heather Hansen, Rick Unger, and Katie Kiefer. Thanks again for being here. The White House, once again, dealing with another scandal involving the Veterans Affairs Office. If you're asking yourself, wait, hasn't this president already had one VA scandal? You would be correct. Former VA Secretary Eric Shinseki was replaced after high-level corruption at VA hospitals. We all remember that across the country after that was revealed. Now, former Procter & Gamble CEO Robert McDonald was then handpicked by the president to get the VA back on track. Well, here's the VA Secretary on what would be, what would take a very, here's the VA Secretary McDonald on what it would take to fix a very broken system.
Do you happen to be a veteran of military service?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Army, Navy, Air Force?
Army.
Army? What unit?
Special Forces.
Special Forces. What years? I was in Special Forces.
Okay, so that is the secretary saying that he was in Special Forces. Problem was that he actually was not in Special Forces, and we're seeing a lot of that lately of people perhaps exaggerating their resumes of the past and obviously the consequences that go along with it. So to review, Mr. McDonald was a member of the Army in the 1970s. He never served in Special Forces. Realizing his error, he provided a sincere apology for the verbal misfire by issuing a very personal statement, and I quote, "While I was in Los Angeles engaging a homeless individual to determine his veteran status, I asked the man where he had served in the military. He responded that he had served in Special Forces. I incorrectly stated that I was in Special Forces, as we just heard. That was inaccurate, and I apologize to anyone that was offended by my misstatement. So Heather Hansen, NBC, basically fired Brian Williams for lying. Will we see the same thing from the White House? Should he be fired?
Now, listen, to me, the issue where he said that he had fired 900 people and that may not be true is far more disturbing than this. The more important thing is, what does it mean to the vets? And some of the vets have come forward. In fact, one of them said he caught the fish, he just stretched it a bit. You know, I don't think that they think this is that big of a deal. I think that they're happy that he's bringing to mind the idea that he's talking to homeless veterans and the fact that that is such a problem. If he can get it together with regard to policies and fixing things, this is not the end of the world.
Rick, I wonder why he would lie in that situation. You're a former Procter & Gamble president, you run the VA. Why even go there?
He was trying to find a connection with the guy. It was a mistake, shouldn't have done it, no excusing it, not the end of the world. I'll tell you what though, this is another in a string of examples where we're now going to spend a 24 or a 48-hour news cycle talking about something not important when we should be talking about, has he been successful at the VA? And I don't think he's been as successful as he should be at this point. So let's talk about the real issue, not the manufactured one.
Why don't you think he's been successful at this point?
Well, you'd have to ask him why he's lagging, but I don't like what I'm seeing. I think they should have come further. Heather's right. The statement he made on one of the Sunday shows about having fired 900 people wasn't exactly accurate. In fact, about half of those people were on probationary. First year, when you work for the VA, you're on probation. Doesn't count as being fired if they send you away from that. And that was about half the people.
Well, and just to add to that point, those are people who had nothing to do with the scandal if they've been there for less than a year. So when he gets on Meet the Press and says, I've fired 60 people for the waiting times, that's just not true.
That matters.
Okay.
That makes
so if you're adding it up then that is basically two lies,
I'm not sure I want to add them. But
and there is a difference between this man in his position and Brian Williams, who is not merely, but he is a journalist. He doesn't have oversight or input into policies or a budget, whereas this man does. And he is impacting real people's lives. And when we have so many young vets, especially going through PTSD and depression and losing their limbs on our behalf, it is important that this man is a man of integrity. And I have a cousin who is a ranger. And there's a difference between being a ranger and going through the training. There's a big difference.
But it should be noted, though, it should be noted that Army Rangers do train with Special Forces. Right. And so can that be a gray area?
Look what we're doing. We're now parsing. Is it this?
Semantics.
Forget it. You know?
They don't care. They want help. They need help. They have a problem there. This is nothing to the majority of them. There are some on Facebook, but the American Legion, the different people, he has apologized. He's owned it. It was a mistake. That is less worrisome to me than not being honest about what he's doing as far as firing, what he's doing as far as fixing it and actually fixing it.
Let's keep the focus where it belongs. Is he succeeding at the VA? Is he not succeeding? Is he succeeding quickly enough? It is the biggest issue we have in this country. Nobody gets to call this an exceptional country, as we talked about last night. If we continue to break our promise to our veterans, it's not okay. That's what matters. Forget the distractions.
Well, and there has to be continuity. You know, we can't just keep switching people if we don't like something that they say. Katie, I agree with you 100% that he has a position where it's not a journalist, but he actually has to put in policies, but he has to have time to do that. And he's been here, what, 7 months?
Yeah.
You know, that's not a lot of time to undo.
Something.
I agree, but not to undo a lot of what has been done.
It just seems like there has to be so many other applicants out there that if he isn't going to show himself to be honest, there's other people we could have in this position.
That's what I wonder about. If you get to a third so-called lie, right, with the number of people fired, and I was in Special Forces, and then there's another one.
It depends what it is. I just don't think this is that big of a deal.
But integrity is important. Integrity is important no matter who you are. But when you're in the public eye, it becomes even more important.
Like I said, anybody who's ever filled out a resume, you're going to sit here and tell me you didn't stretch a little bit.
Is this the pattern we're going to see, though? Going forward is clearly exposed. do we automatically start saying, you're fired,
Well,
that's it?
just it. We've become fixated on this because of the Brian Williams thing, the Bill O'Reilly thing, which I think is another tempest in a teapot, and I'm not Bill O'Reilly's biggest fan. It's like, enough of this. It's become hip, you know, it's like drive-by shootings. When they become popular in LA, they keep happening. Enough of this. Stop with the distractions. Focus on the important issue.
Right. And it's interesting that it all has to do with military service. You know, there's this whole issue where people are trying to exaggerate their military service. At the end of the day, he is serving our veterans, and he's got to do it better. And that's where he needs to be fired if he doesn't get it together.
Okay, so let's set an example right now. Okay, Katie, it's a one-word answer. Did you ever serve in the military?
No, I haven't.
Rick?
No?
No.
I played Risk, and I was very good at it. You take Kamchatka.
Could you take Kamchatka?
Yep,
Right.
you take Cyan. You take the game, my friend.
That's it.
No question about it. See, we're setting examples here. On
Telling the truth.
My favorite board game.
Oh, absolutely.
It is, by far. I love
kills
it.
Payday.
Yeah, oh yeah.
No question about it.
And life.
Come on. Battleship?
Nah, not even close to Risk. Risk
Not
is the
big on
game.
Battleship. Monopoly always took too long, quite
Monopoly,
frankly.
yeah.
And
Right?
you lose the money, you know. Nah,
What was the best property on in Monopoly?
Ave,
Actually,
right?
Park Ave was probably the best.
Park Ave is our
The
final
hotels?
answer.
Yeah.
Anyway, coming up next on the raft, Reverend Al Sharpton is feeling some heat from someone you wouldn't expect. Ooh, what a tease. Find out who. This is the Daily Max, only on Newsmax TV. Welcome back to the Daily Wrap, everybody, as we continue with our panel. Heather Hansen, Rick Unger, Katie Kiefer. Reverend Al Sharpton's not with us tonight, but he loves being in the news. But I'm sure he would prefer not to have this story go nationwide. Conservative filmmaker and activist James O'Keefe, he's back. And his team secretly filmed Erica Snipes, daughter of New York City NYPD choking victim Eric Garner, dishing on the Reverend. Let's hear from her.
Who's your father?
Yeah, that was my father. I'm his oldest child.
So what, you think Al Sharpton is kind of like a crook in a sense? Like you think he's like...
It's about this. It's about this.
We should tell you Erica Garner has severed ties with the MSNBC host and frequent White House guest. Why? Because he's only interested in his own personal gains. Listen to what Sharpton's National Action Network demanded Erica to do.
This lady, Cynthia
Davis. She's the chapter out here for the National Action Network.
Cynthia Davis called you and told you, oh, you need to put the logos.
She told me to my face too.
Cynthia Davis is one of Al Sharpton's top lieutenants.
She started attacking me as far as, oh, I seen that you got this flyer out. How come you ain't add the logo?
So they want their logo on your flyers?
On my flyers.
But it's not about them, it's about your dad.
Exactly. Instead of me, he wants his face in front of him. Al
Wants his group, which is what?
For the funeral. She's trying to make me feel like I'm old.
Ooh, hold on. How come I ain't noticed?
Because they need
when I
them
first came
in
out
a way to
promoting
fundraise.
my thing.
But it shouldn't be about money.
Asked me the information. And
How are you? Welcome to America, sweetheart.
Katie Kiefer, should we be shocked by any of this news?
No, I wasn't at all, because we have a track record of this administration, which had a historic opportunity with a biracial president.
When you say administration,
what do they have to do with it?
Well, this administration has set a tone that it's okay to use race as a division factor.
Seriously?
Or for political, gain, which is what
Well, Rick,
Sharpton
before you
does.
jump in, so Al Sharpton does visit the White House a lot, but he's not actually in the administration. But I think he's there so much that the impression is that he is an unofficial member of the White House.
Right. And so when you have Obama going out there and selecting certain crimes to pay attention to, such as Trayvon, calling Trayvon his son, but he doesn't call Erica Garner his daughter. And it's just setting a bad tone. And instead of looking at Sharpton, though, we could look at what MTV recently did. They did a study of the millennial generation, and they asked them what they thought about race. And 73% of them said, quote, never considering race would improve society. That's what they think. And 88% actually oppose affirmative action. So we don't need to be hyperventilating about race, we should look at each other just as people, and we would move forward.
Amen to that. But Rick, you seem to take
issue.
issue.
Except none of that was about the issue of race, and none of that was about the White House. That was one of the most amazing stretches I've ever seen to get to Obama. Look, this is sleaze on sleaze crime. Anybody who thinks that Al Sharpton is in this for anything but the money is kidding themselves. And by the way, he was doing it long before any of us ever heard of Barack Obama. That's number one.
But he
number
has
two,
power in the White House.
Number two, yeah, fine. So
Okay,
what?
well,
What's that got to do with this?
Well, you've got to.
What does that have to do with this?
You've got to
You know what?
acknowledge that.
You know his dog's in the White House. Is he relevant to this? What a silly thing to say. I'm sorry. That's just crazy.
Rick. But he was on the White House visitors log
So what?
over 80 times. Why would the president even consort with somebody like this
Why
and
is
ask
that
for
the
his
issue
advice?
we're talking about, unless you're working really hard? And I want to finish my point because I'm not done yet. Anytime you see somebody having to secretly film somebody like that, that's pure sleaze. So that's why I say this is sleaze on sleaze crime. These are two people who deserve each other.
Did you agree that
Mr. O'Keefe and Mr. What?
Did you agree that Mitt Romney shouldn't have been taped then?
Actually, no, because Mitt Romney knows he's going to be taped, or sure as heck should know he's going to be taped. So no,
At a
it's
private
not the same.
fundraiser?
Yes, I mean, come on, you're running for president, you're always going to.
So
be
that
taped.
wasn't sleaze, but this
So
was
actually,
sleaze.
you could argue that as sleaze. Again, I don't know why you feel. All of you seem to feel the need to divert the issue. We're talking here about Al Sharpton. We're not talking about Barack Obama. We're talking about this family.
We're
talking about whether or not he's taking money. So, you know, if
Rick, let Heather.
You know that his access to power is part of the issue here. So,
no, it's not.
It is. Of course it is.
Do you know what he does?
How can you say it's not when the consistent word used about Al Sharpton, it's used in that tape, it's used in the lawsuit that was just brought against him and Compass, is shakedown.
Yeah.
And you can't commit a shakedown
Do you know how
unless you
long
have
Al Sharpton
access
was
to
committing?
power.
Really?
I'm not saying.
Really?
I'm not. Yeah, of
Do you know
course.
how long Al Sharpton's been doing shakedowns? Answer the question.
We all have. So why does the president still allow him back in the White House?
I agree with you. I don't know why he lets him anywhere near it, but I'm also not going to go there when it has nothing to do with the story. I don't know why the president ever let me in the White House, but it's got nothing to do with the story. He's been doing shakedowns before you ever heard of Barack Obama.
Of course.
And
So
we have
don't do that.
And we have to end it there and shake down this segment. Very good big argument. It was so fun ganging up on Rick, all three of us. Up next is Potluck Time. This is the Daily Wrap on Newsmax TV. Welcome back to the show, everybody. It's Potluck Time. This is the part of the show where we all get to talk about our favorite stories of the day. And Heather Hansen, you're head chef.
All right. My story is about Mike Rogers, the head of the NSA, was in a speech, I think yesterday, talking about the risks of cyber attack that we have and the fact that our infrastructure isn't prepared for it, the fact that we have such a huge enemy with Iran on this particular issue. And there was a New York Times piece this weekend on that saying that the cost of nuclear war is so high that we're really engaging in cyber war and we're not prepared for the fight. We're not talking about our lack of preparation. We're focused on the nuclear issue, which I know is a big focus, but I think that we need to start opening it up, especially our younger people, and realizing that this is going to be the war of the future.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Die Hard 4.
I could not agree more. I think that we don't come close to doing what we need to do. And we can't seem to get the cooperation between the corporations and the government. Now criticize Obama. Now, this is where you criticize him because he has not done enough to protect us from cyber warfare.
You being objective, issue to issue.
I just
not
want
just
smart
being the blind
debate.
ideologue that we all thought you were.
Smart debate, folks.
Right, all right.
No,
Katie.
I mean, he really, all seriousness, he really hasn't done enough. This is a critical issue,
Katie,
and it's not being handled.
You're teed up.
Okay. Well, they have a program where they're trying to reach out to hackers to train them to be, counterterrorism hackers. But one of the requirements for this program was that you could never have committed a crime. Well, hacking is a crime. So to get the best hackers, we should probably adjust that program. And it's just all very simple things that we could be doing.
Well, doesn't this mean though we have to start really looking into actually exporting talent from North Korea, because they could hack better than anybody. That Geek Squad showed Amy Pascal and Sony.
Wasn't this a TV series?
No, but
Die Hard 4.
But to Katie's point, I mean, if we're willing to do business with terrorists in order to protect ourselves from other terrorists, then we should be willing to do business with hackers in order to protect ourselves from hackers. And it is the warfare of the future, and we need to be thinking that way, as opposed to it's old-fashioned thinking. It's nuclear war versus cyber war. It's old-fashioned thinking.
This is your topic. What's the worst case scenario?
Worst case scenario is our banks go down, our intellectual property is stolen. They're saying that a lot of our jet fighter plans have been stolen by the Chinese. I mean, this is a lot more dangerous than I think the Sony hack. I mean, not to discount that.
That was dangerous. That took down an entire movie.
Took down an entire movie. Actually,
CEO of Sony.
It did the movie a lot of good, I think.
True.
Probably.
I saw the movie. Nobody would have gone.
What about War Games and Matthew Broderick and a young Ali? Was that Ali Sheedy?
Yeah. What was the line?
Well, I don't know what the line
There was
was.
one line he said, "Do you want to play a
Do
game?"
you want to play a game?
Something like that.
And he was actually able to, through his computer at home, through dial-up, mind you, nearly start wars.
Now, this is the real deal. And what they can do, it's absolutely true. They could take down the banking system, but banks aren't stupid. They've got backups. But imagine if they took down the power grid.
The power grid.
And all of these other things.
Okay. Well, we'll everybody sleep well tonight. Rick Unger, you're up next if you still have an appetite.
Whatever happened to Loretta Lynch? You remember her? She was
Loretta Lynch,
nominated
she's a great
for
singer.
Great coal miner's daughter, right? Yeah. Nominated to be the next Attorney General. She had her hearings weeks ago. Since that time, Ash Carter's not only had his hearing, but has been approved and is in office. Whatever happened to Loretta Lynch? Well, what happened to her was exactly what I predicted would happen to her, that they were not going to let her get away with defending the president on the immigration issue. And yet, you're not going to turn around and bite the hand that fed you. So now you've got Ted Cruz.
It was more than the immigration issue.
Well, what else do you think it is?
IRS. She didn't give a good answer to the IRS.
Well, you don't like her answer.
Drones. She didn't give an answer.
Yeah.
If she had given good, thoughtful, thought-out answers, I wouldn't have less of a problem with it.
So what do you think should happen to her?
Well, right now, she's given, 200 pages of written questions she was supposed to provide, and she hasn't
200 pages?
Something like that.
How many questions are in 200 pages?
I can't imagine.
Because if you at least have just five on, you're answering 1,000 questions.
This is Ted Cruz being Ted Cruz, but I'll just say this to you, and then we'll pass it along. Just remember, if you don't approve anybody, you have Eric Holder for the rest of Obama's term.
That's but I think they're willing to do that. I mean, if you read Ted Cruz's op-ed in Politico today, I think he's willing to stick with Holder rather than get somebody in who's willing to say from the start, I support everything that President Obama does. I think that these written question responses, I mean, she had a chance after the preliminary injunction on amnesty was entered to change her answer a little bit to support that, and she didn't. I think they have some real questions, and they're valid questions.
They apparently had a lot of questions.
Questions about her answers.
Very few are valid in terms of her qualification. But
she has phenomenal qualifications, and I like the fact that she has so much experience with terrorism and terrorism trials here in Brooklyn.
What is the job of the Senate to do? The job of the Senate is to explore qualifications to make a determination if that person is fit for office. Not agree politically, to see if they're fit for office. So if you can say that she has the qualifications, I can't understand why you're having a problem with the nomination.
To disagree with Supreme Court decisions in her answers, which is what she did with regard to the GPS placement on somebody's car, with regard to the IRS issue.
She disagrees.
But that make her less
So you
fit.
don't think that she's fit?
She's qualified. I'm not so sure she's fit.
And I have a feeling we'll have more time to talk about this tomorrow because we're not going to get a confirmation anytime soon. When we come back, we will have more political potluck for you, including my own dish. It's time for Yay and Nay after that as well, critically acclaimed. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV. Welcome back to Daily Wrap, everybody. We're in the middle of our potluck. We're discussing our favorite stories of the day. Katie Kiefer, welcome to your first potluck. And first, show off your book because I think the cover is tremendous. Let me be clear. Barack Obama's War on Millennials and One Woman's Case for Hope. Almost like the audacity
letter to
of hope.
Obama's on the back.
Well, look at you. Good for you. So everybody, please go out and buy that book. And sorry to distract you. What are we talking about today?
Well, my potluck is the issue of rape on campus, and there's an epidemic where between 2008 and 2012, we've seen an increase of about 49%. And so to address that issue, what I would recommend is allowing young women to carry concealed on campus. And so even the New York Times actually came out recently, a couple of weeks ago, saying that that would be a good idea. 10 states are right now considering the idea of legislation that would allow this. 41 states ban it now. But I definitely think that it would be wise because only 7% of young men on college campuses ever will commit sexual assault, but the majority of those, over 60%, have committed over 6 rapes. So we're talking about
Can you repeat that again? Because numbers sometimes don't play well on television.
7% of college men have ever committed sexual assault. And of that 7%, 63% have committed at least 6 rapes.
Is the 7% attempted sexual assault, or is it actual convicted of sexual assault or accused? That's where I think, I don't expect you to know that answer. I think just sometimes
I believe it's that they actually committed it.
Okay,
so
it's still a high number.
Yeah.
Well, my point is just that it's not the average person who is doing it if they're committing
There's another
6.
93% still they're right, I understand.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you in theory, but my issue with it is that the majority of these rapes involve alcohol. And so then I get concerned about people carrying when they're drunk, and because we know that alcohol is one of the major factors in sexual assault on campus. And it's another, I think it's the root of the problem. Addressing the symptom, I get it, and I'm all for the Second Amendment, but I just worry about the combination of those two things.
Right. I mean, people raise that point quite often, and it's a valid point, but a common myth is that most of these rapes occurred on dates, and it's actually, you're far more likely to have a classmate, not a friend or a boyfriend, who commits this sort of violence against you, and it will happen, you know, in a library or in a mutual study group. So it is someone you know, and oftentimes it's at a frat party or whatnot. And so my thought is, if people knew that even one man at that party, or one woman at the party, or one woman at the library is carrying concealed, it would be a deterrent.
If it's concealed, how are they going to know?
It's a deterrent effect,
The
because
fact
he
that they
doesn't
might
know
have it.
that
All
her
I
best
know
friend.
is a lot of guys, if these laws go through, guys are going to think long and hard before breaking a date.
Yeah, that's true, and you've done that on many occasions. Katie, great topic. Thanks so much. Sorry to put you on the spot there. It's just it's obviously been a very hot topic, particularly with UVA. And the whole Rolling Stone story. I hope that didn't hurt the momentum, at least, of legitimate cases. And you know, we'll hear how that investigation turned out. Speaking of college, are fans court storming too much? Let's look at last night. Kansas State upsets Kansas. This game was in Manhattan, not New York, but the Manhattan of Kansas. And this was considered a major upset, because what you had was an unranked Kansas State team beating 8th-ranked Kansas, and then you see the melee, and you look at that, you say, no big deal, this happens in college all the time. Here's where my issue is. Kansas is number 8 in the country. They're not 1, they're not 2. It's a conference win at home against a rival. It's not like Kansas was the national champions and, oh my God, I can't believe we beat them. And K-State wasn't exactly like the biggest underdog either. I think the spread was 3 or something like that. Yet you see all these folks running onto the court, and let me tell you what the Kansas coach said afterwards, Bill Self. He said, I wasn't nervous for me. There were several students that hit our players. I'm not saying like with a fist, but I'm saying when you storm the court, you run in, you bump everybody, stump on that. This has got to stop. And the Southeast Conference. Well, the Southeast Conference, for instance, not a small conference by any capacity, and has #1 ranked Kentucky in it. If you beat them, you should be able to storm a court.
Right.
All right.
Okay. So
but let's say you're LSU and you beat Kentucky, you can't storm that court because the SEC says you're not allowed to do it.
Well, very, very easy. If it's Ohio State, it's okay. If it's anybody else, it's not okay.
Yeah,
wow.
I think you're have a shifting line.
But you're a millennium, right?
That wouldn't happen in Minnesota. They don't get in any kind of hockey fights or anything like that.
No. We can't storm the court in hockey. The boards are too high. But Rick, at one point, but back when you were in school, you used to be able to rush a football field and tear down the goalpost, and they banned that.
Well, that's because when I was in school, the goalposts were really low. That's 100 years ago, you know?
Right. The leather helmet era.
They had leather helmets. It was a whole other game.
Do you think they should just outlaw it altogether? Say that you just can't storm the court, period, end of story?
No,
Or if you beat Kentucky, you can.
There should be a law. Unless it's the #1 team in the country, you are not allowed to storm the court. You make it a national law. The president should have an executive order and just pass that damn thing.
Debate it.
Anyway, coming up next after the break, it's Yay or Nay time. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV.
Travolta was on fire last night. He almost kissed Idina Menzel. Then he actually did kiss Scarlett Johansson. But he wasn't the worst one there. Look, Biden, Joe Biden.
Handsy. Tremendous. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. That was Jimmy Fallon, of course, giving his Oscars recap on the show last night, which brings us to our first yay or nay of the evening. Even though he tried to redeem himself, will Travolta be back next year to apologize to Undina Menzel yet again? Yay or nay, Heather Hansen?
No, I think that this is just how he is. He used to be that way with Oprah. He's very touchy-feely. I don't think he's going to apologize for that at all.
Rick, you're touchy-feely.
Yeah, I agree. He's put it to rest.
Agreed.
I don't think he should have to. I mean, it seems like we're getting too nitpicky if he has to apologize.
Now, if he lies, that's a different story.
That is different.
Then he's going to have to come back.
Okay, look, here's the bottom line. I go yay as well, or nay, actually, that would be my answer, because he's Danny Zuko, right?
Right.
Oh,
yeah,
that's all you need to know.
Grease.
Yeah, that movie was only out almost 40 years ago. Anyway, this next one is really great. An undergrad college student in Pennsylvania tried to get himself a fake ID. Sounds good so far, right? Well, the problem is his name is Dean, and his 8 fake IDs were sent to, and I hope you're sitting down for this, the dean of the college by mistake. If Hollywood was pitched this scenario as part of the script, it would be dismissed as too fictional, too impossible, right? Yay or nay, Katie? Oh, by the way, yay or nay, do you have a fake ID, actually, is our yay or nay?
Not at the moment. No, and I never have, actually,
never have.
before.
Okay,
but
I figure you're 20, so.
I do believe we should legalize drugs, which sort of relates to this, and maybe then kids wouldn't be going to such desperate measures.
I think it's more for alcohol, isn't it? Yeah.
Right,
like
but we could lower the
Coke.
age. I would go for lowering the age as well.
Okay, I like that idea.
Is his last name Warmer?
We tried to get Dean Wormer, but we realized that the actor that played him is passed, unfortunately.
Really, John Vernon?
0.0.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well,
3 years ago.
yeah. Of course, I had a fake ID. Who didn't?
Really?
Yeah, you didn't.
But why would you need an ID during Prohibition? It was so easy. It was right there, and I took it. Katie, Katie, Heather?
I did, and I got it taken away when I had to sign the book and sign my own name instead of the name on the ID.
It's not hard. You have an alias.
I know.
You're not a good criminal.
I know. Clearly.
Now, if I did something illegal and I told it on the air right now and it happened 24 years ago,
You're way past
I'm way past statute of limitations? Okay, I'll tell the story quickly.
As long as it's not murder.
All right, this is pre-9/11, so basically all you had to do to go to the DMV in Jersey was show your brother's birth certificate, which I did, and they didn't even ask for any other form of ID. They just gave you the identification. And my brother had the same name as my father, so I had like Sears cards and like expired stuff, and it worked out tremendously until my brother said, by the way, use it when you're at school, just don't use it around town because maybe the bouncer knows me. I got cocky, bouncer knew. And that was the end of that. But
what did the bouncer do?
The bouncer took it away.
Oh, he took it?
Yeah, and lambasted me, if that's a word. So that's the rule, kids. When you use a fake ID, don't use it in your own hometown. Anyway, a 94-year-old man has been charged with 3,681 counts of accessory to murder. Heather, I hope you get this case. In Germany on allegations he served at Auschwitz. Oh, good Lord. If found guilty, the former SS sergeant who acted as a medical officer at the Nazi death camp in 1944 could face a jail term ranging from 3 to 15 years. Remember, this man is 93 years old, Rick Unger. Is it too little too late, yay or nay?
Nay, no mercy.
Agreed.
Nay, never too late for justice.
Katie.
Oh, this is tough. I wonder where his mind is even at, if he has Alzheimer's, if he's even able to speak, properly with regard to the situation.
Yay or nay, Katie, make a decision.
I would have to speak with him in person.
Okay.
Figure out.
I like it. I say yay. Give him 15 years and he'll probably be dead in 6 months, so who cares? Okay, finally. Men have a bad rep for their lack of personal hygiene. Is that true? And overall cleanliness, except for Rick and I, of course. But the fair sex may be just as lax in their personal care routines, if not worse. A new survey out of England found, because they have great hygiene over there, almost 63% of women can't be bothered to remove their makeup before bed. 1 in 8 don't brush their teeth at night. 4 out of 5 women admit they don't shower every day, and a third saying they can go for 3 days, are you kidding me, without washing their body, and the shocking 1 in 3 have gone as long as 3 days without washing or wiping their face or body at all. Will this anti-showering trend continue? Yay or nay? Katie, did you shower today?
I added a lot of perfume, which is what the French women do.
Good Lord! You really didn't shower today. When was the last time you showered? You're on national television. Just share.
It's okay. Actually, it's not healthy for your body to shower every day. It's better to do it every other day.
Okay, so Rick?
It may not be healthy, but I have to take a shower every morning.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that American women are more vain than some of the others.
This was in
so
Europe, this poll?
Yeah,
I think
this was in England.
Well, that explains everything.
I think that, yeah, I think American women tend to be more vain, more likely to brush their
That's
teeth
interesting.
every day.
The poll didn't mention that the British only brush their teeth every other day, so that's that's that. Well, anyway, that's our show for this evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to catch us tomorrow night, where we're all going to be freshly showered. I can guarantee you that. At 6 p.m. Eastern for some more Daily Wrap right here on Newsmax TV. Thank you, panel. I appreciate it so much. I'm Joe Concha saying bye-bye.